All right, guys. So following up again on this event that happened out in Uvalde, Texas, that involved a lunatic going on a mass shooting at an elementary school that ended up taking the lives of 21 people, including 19 kids. And the death toll may or may not get higher at this point. Again, we got to talk about the politicization of this event, which again is super sad in my opinion that people do this right after these events, instead of taking the time to, mourn the loss of these kids and to pray for these families. I think there's definitely time to talk about solutions, but right after an event like this happens, the bodies aren't even cold, and you got, politicians out here grandstanding to their base, pretending as if they have solutions that they really don't have to solve this sick, evil problem that we have in our country. So that being said, I want to talk more specifically about some of the things that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have come out here and said in response to this mass shooting. And let's go ahead and get into it by starting with Kamala Harris and her response to this event. Take a look.
So I would normally say in a moment like this, we would all say naturally that our hearts break, but our hearts keep getting broken. I think there's so many elected leaders in this room. You know what I'm talking about. Every time a tragedy like this happens, our hearts break. And our broken hearts are nothing compared to the broken hearts of those families. And yet it keeps happening. So I think we all know and have said many times with each other, enough is enough. Enough is enough. As a nation, we have to have the courage to take action and understand the nexus between what makes for reasonable and sensible public policy to ensure something like this never happens again. So the president will speak more about this later.
Yeah, so Kamala stopped short of saying what we all know she actually wants to say, the same thing that all Democrats call for when this happens. She's going to defer to her daddy, Joe Biden, who allegedly doesn't like when Kamala Harris speaks out of turn. Apparently, he puts her in her place when she does that. So she's like, hey, you know what? I'm not really going to say too much. I'm going to let Daddy Joe speak on this issue. And Joe Biden comes out and says what we all know the Democrat Party is going to say every single time something like this happens. Take a look.
As a nation, we have to ask, when in God's name are we going to stand up to the gun lobby? When in God's name we do what we all know in our gut needs to be done? I am sick and tired of it. We have to act. And don't tell me we can't have an impact on this carnage. When we passed the assault weapons ban, mass shootings went down. When the law expired, mass shootings tripled. What struck me was these kinds of mass shootings rarely happen anywhere else in the world. Why? They have mental health problems. They have domestic disputes in other countries. They have people who are lost. But these kinds of mass shootings never happen with the kind of frequency they happen in America. Why? Why are we willing to live with this carnage? Why do we keep letting this happen? Where in God's name is our backbone to have the courage to deal with it and stand up to the lobbies? It's time to turn this pain into action for every parent, for every citizen in this country. We have to make it clear to every elected official in this country, it's time to act.
Guys, you know what I find to be interesting about Biden's claims is that they're very similar to the claims that Democrats make about so-called voter suppression. Except apparently when it comes to voter suppression, voter turnout and voter suppression, correlation doesn't equal causation, okay? According to Stacey Abrams, okay? But when it comes to Biden and his assault weapons ban, correlation does equal causation, right? Biden claimed that when he passed the assault weapons ban, right, when the Democrats did that back in the 90s, that mass shootings went down significantly. And then once it lapsed after 10 years, George Bush basically let it lapse. Oh, mass shootings went up significantly after that. And that's just a flat out lie, right? And the Democrats know it's a lie. In fact, a 2004 study for the Justice Department found that the ban's impact on gun violence in general was mixed, and that assault weapons are rarely used in gun crimes in general, and they're rarely used in mass shootings as well too. Only 24.6% of mass shootings come from so-called assault weapons, right? Now, during the ban from 1995 to 2004, there were 19 incidents of mass shootings per year, okay? And after the ban, in 2011, the average went up to 21. So Biden talking about mass shootings increased threefold after his assault weapons ban expired is, again, actually a lie, right? It's a bald-faced lie. Again, it's the same thing they do with voter suppression. They make these claims without having real data or evidence to back up any of these claims. But they go out here and they push these solutions as if, hey, they're trying to protect the public, right? They're trying to, protect the average person, when what they're really trying to do is hurt the average person, right? Hurt law-abiding citizens by trying to enact a ban that is not going to be effective for the problem that they claim they're trying to solve. And that tells us what this all is about, right? Hurting law-abiding citizens for political points, right? And I think that my Lieutenant Governor, Mark Robinson, made an excellent point about Democrats who always come out here and call for these so-called gun restriction laws every single time a mass shooting happens, okay? And I actually want to play this speech that he gave from a couple years ago that, again, I think drives home the point perfectly about how this stuff is really about hurting law-abiding citizens more so than stopping the mass shootings that they claim that they care about so much. Take a look.
Heard a whole lot of people in here talking tonight about this group and that group and domestic violence and blacks, these minorities and that minority. What I want to know is, when are you all going to start standing up for the majority? And here's who the majority is. I'm the majority. I'm a law-abiding citizen who's never shot anybody, never committed a serious crime, never committed a felony. I've never done anything like that. But it seems like every time we have one of these shootings, nobody wants to put the blame where it goes, which is at the shooter's feet. You want to put it at my feet. You want to turn around and restrict my right, constitutional right that's spelled out in black and white. You want to restrict my right to buy a firearm and protect myself from some of the very people you're talking about in here tonight. It's ridiculous. I don't think Rod Serling could come up with a better script. It does not make any sense. The law-abiding citizens of this community and many communities around this country, we're the first ones taxed and the last ones considered and the first ones punished when things like this happens, because our rights are the ones that are being taken away. That's the reason why I came down here today. Gun show or no gun show, NRA or no NRA. I'm here to stand up for the law-abiding citizens of this community, because I'm going to tell you that what's going to happen. You can take the guns away from us all you want to. You all write a law, I follow the law, I'll bring my guns down here, I'll turn them in. But here's what's going to happen. The Crips and the Bloods on the other side of town, they're not going to turn their guns in. They're going to hold on to them. And what's going to happen when you have to send the police down there to go take them? The police can barely enforce the law as it is. As what I see, we demonize the police, criminalize and vilify the police, and we make the criminals into victims. And we're talking about restricting guns? How are you going to do that? How are you going to do that when the police department's already hamstrung? You're not going to be able to go down here and take these guns from these criminals. So the criminals are going to hold on to their guns. They're still going to have them. They're still going to break in my house, and they're still going to shoot me with them. And guess who's going to be the one that suffers? It's going to be me. Well, I'm here to tell you tonight, it is not going to happen without a fight. And when I say fight, I don't mean shots fired. I don't mean fist thrown. I mean I'm going to come down here to this city council and raise hell just like these loonies from the left do until you listen to the majority of the people in this city. And I am the majority. The majority of the people in this city are law-abiding. And they follow the law. and they want their constitutional right to be able to bear arms. They want to be able to go to the gun show and buy a hunting rifle or a sport rifle. There are no military-grade weapons sold at the gun show. An AR-15 is not a military-grade weapon. Anybody that would go into combat with an AR-15 is a fool. It's a semi-automatic 22 rifle. You'd be killed in 15 minutes in combat with that thing. So we need to dispel all these myths, and we need to drop all this division that we got going on here. Because the bottom line is, when that Second Amendment was written, whether the framers liked it or not, they wrote it for everybody. And I am everybody. And the law-abiding citizens of this city are everybody. And we want our rights, and we want to keep our rights. And by God, we're going to keep them, come hell or high water.
Yeah, that speech gives me goosebumps, right? I'm glad that guy is my lieutenant governor, because what he says is 100% correct about how the Democrats always respond to these issues, right? Whether that be gun crimes and gun violence going on in the inner cities that are mainly run by Democrats, or when these mass shootings happen. They never focus on the actual person that is committing the acts of violence, right? In the cities where you got the thugs and the criminals, the gang members with the guns, right? They say, hey, we need to take the guns out of the cities, right? We need to take the guns away from everybody. However, again, the criminals keep the guns, and then you leave the law-abiding citizens there without guns, and they can't protect themselves, right? Like, look at what happened in New York, okay? Look at the subway shooter. Hey, dude was armed to the teeth. Nobody else in that subway was armed, right? They couldn't stop him. Why? Because, again, New York City has some of the strictest gun laws in this country. Look at Buffalo, right? The shooter literally said, hey, I'm targeting Buffalo because they have strict gun laws, right? Nobody's going to be able to stop me, or they're not going to easily be able to stop me because they're not armed, right? Again, it's almost like Democrats don't live in the reality of what the world is, okay? They don't live in the reality of it. This is what happens, right? But again, when it comes to the inner cities, they don't demonize the criminals, right? They don't want to lock them up. They don't want to punish them. But they want to take all the guns away from law-abiding citizens. That is why black folks, the people that are the most affected by this stuff, they're buying guns in droves now, right? Black people are some of the largest growing demographics when it comes to gun ownership. Why is that? Because they've realized that, hey, you know what? All this gun control stuff, along with this soft on crime, aka defund the police stuff that the Democrats are trying to push, people are realizing we're vulnerable, right? We're being left out to dry. We can't depend on law enforcement. We can't depend on the criminal justice system to lock these guys up. We can't depend on these gun control laws because the criminals aren't giving up their guns. Okay, so again, they're out saying, look, we need to arm ourselves in response. Okay, but again, when it comes to these mass shootings, the stereotypical ones, right? Because there are mass shootings that occur a whole lot. They just ignore those, the ones in the city. But when it comes to the ones that we think about, you know, the lone shooter that goes out into a school or a movie theater or whatever, every time it happens, they never want to talk about the shooter. Unless the shooter happens to be white. Then they start talking about white supremacy, right? They don't want to talk about gun control then. They want to talk about white supremacy, like they did in Buffalo, right? You notice how the gun control wasn't the conversation. It was white supremacy and replacement theory in the Republican Party, right? That's what they want to talk about. Now that the shooter is not white, they say, oh, no, we need to talk about gun control, okay? But they don't want to talk about the shooter, right? They don't want to talk about the fact that this shooter obviously had some mental problems going on. They don't want to talk about mental health. They don't want to talk about increasing security at these schools. We have over 40,000 homeless veterans in this country. You mean to tell me we can't employ at least half of them to protect these schools, to protect our kids, right? We can't start some type of program where we can give them a job, right? Employ them, put them out there to protect and serve what they've been doing their whole lives. We can't do that. And again, this is my problem with the Democrat Party. The solutions that they propose don't work. We know they don't work. And then they want to turn around and guilt trip everybody every single time one of these events happen to try to act like, well, nobody's trying to do anything about it. Well, your solutions don't work. They don't work. They haven't worked. So what are you talking about? What are you talking about? You're simply putting this stuff out here as a way to score political points off the backs of dead children and the people that died at the hands of these tragic events. That's what you're doing. You're not concerned about any solutions. Again, the same party that, again, wants universal health care. Even the conversation about mental health goes out the window. They don't even want to talk about that. They simply just want to talk about gun control, specifically background checks, which this guy, the Texas shooter, he passed the background check. That didn't work, right? That didn't stop him. And assault weapons bans, which we know does not curb gun violence, right? We already know that. That's a proven fact. But again, these people don't care about facts. They simply are trying to score political points, and it is absolutely disgusting because it comes at the cost of the rights of law-abiding citizens who have not done anything wrong, who are there to protect themselves and others in their communities just in case things like this happen. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.